Glimpse into the power of media. Now, we invite ILTV's מעין Hofman for a conversation with Troy Miller, president of the National Religious Broadcasters.
Troy, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
For sure. Now, Troy, speaking about truth, you have been leading a coalition of Christian leaders, media leaders, to be able to change the language around Judea and Samaria so that we will no longer call it the West Bank. Why is this so important to you, and how successful is the campaign?
So it's important to us because we know with any conflict, the narrative really drives that conflict. It drives the discussions that we have. And so, as I've traveled in Israel and traveled around churches, there's this, I call it mythical land, this mythical land that was created nearly 40 years ago called the West Bank. And it's really portrayed in mainstream media as this there was at one time this Palestinian utopia, within the land of Israel, and that's really not true. So we started a year ago in 2024 to reshape the narrative of this whole discussion, and we passed a resolution, and we worked with over 1,700 Christian media organizations to discontinue the use of West Bank and to start to call it what it is, Judea and Samaria. And that led us into another piece, which we created a style guide for Christian media that contains a whole bunch of terms that are really wrongly used in the media today. And it's really helped reshape the conversation across the Christian church and Christian media here in America.
Now, this year, though, you took it another step further and you actually signed a new petition, which is to enact sovereignty, to be able to allow the Jews to have sovereignty over the areas of the Judea and Samaria. You're pushing for that. It's an interesting time, though, because President Trump is also pushing for normalization with Saudi Arabia, which might contradict. So how do you grapple with these two things?
Well, look, there's politics on one side, and there's U.S. policy that happens, and then there's the church. And the church in America, look, I think that we may have more Christian Zionists in America than we do Jewish Zionists. Okay, so the church is working very hard, and the church is a big influence on that politics. So we know there's this normalization that the president would like to do with Saudi Arabia, with Qatar, with some other folks, but we want to make sure that the narrative, again, doesn't get lost in all of this, and that Judea and Samaria is the land that God, the creator of the universe, promised to the Jewish people. And I tell people when I speak at churches all the time, first thing I do is I say, go to the back of your Christian Bible, go to the back of that Bible, pull up a map of Joshua's conquest, and look at that land. That's the land that God gave to the Jewish people. We can't revoke that. The U.S. government can't revoke that. And certainly the Arabs and the Palestinians can't revoke that. And we want to make sure the church stands firm behind that, because that will drive U.S. policy.
Now, Troy, you speak very eloquently. But the reality is that a lot of Christians are not actually speaking up, though they do believe the way you do. How do you convince more Christian allies to be vocal about these issues?
Well, a couple of things. First, there are a lot of churches that are speaking up, and more churches every day. We've had several events throughout since October 7th. I came to Israel just 2 months after that. We did in 2024, and now in 2025, we've had several Pray for Israel Sundays. We've had over 1,000 churches that have been involved with that. And we have media ministries today that are speaking up. Last week, we were on Capitol Hill with over 300, a mixture between Christian pastors, leaders, and rabbis, all on Capitol Hill to advocate for Israel's right to exist. And so I think we just have to keep pushing the pressure on these pastors across the country and these media outlets, quite honestly, to be courageous. To just simply be courageous and stand up for the rights of Israel to exist.
Wonderful. Now, final question, Troy. How do you envision the future of Jewish-Christian relations, especially in the new era with an ambassador like Mike Huckabee in the land? What do you see as the next steps for us moving forward?
Well, look, I think since the horrible tragedy on October 7th, I think one thing has happened that I've seen. I've been to Israel 4 times now. I'm going next week. I'll be there for the Jerusalem prayer breakfast. Again, I think we've seen a tighter relation between the Christian church and the Jewish people, not only in Israel, but here in the U.S. as well. I think we've seen a lot of barriers come down. I've met with a number of Orthodox rabbis, Orthodox organizations, and we're just seeing a lot of cooperation that's happening. So I think we have a bright future. I think we have a strong future. I think the future for Israel support again in the U.S. really sets with the church, with the evangelical church. And I'm here to tell you that that support right now is strong, and we're going to keep working to make it stronger every day.
Troy Miller, President of the National Religious Broadcasters, thank you so much.
Thank you.